the running charity supports 16 to 24-year-olds out of homelessness through running. And it's really a group of people that you don't associate with homelessness, is it really? So tell us about the charity in a nutshell, but also the inspiration behind it.
So essentially, the running charity deliver running and personal development programs to young people that are impacted by homelessness. So at any one point last year, for example, I think 112,000 young people were approached their local authorities and councils because of their homelessness. But essentially, my background, my background was sport. I was working for a homeless day centre. I originally started off many moons ago coaching football at Millwall Football Club. And then I ended up working at a homeless day centre that was looking for a football coach and manager. And as the first wave of recessions started happening in 2010, 2011, my sports work became less and less. And what happened was, to put it bluntly, I was a bit of a glorified bouncer working on a youth.
Oh no,
well and good, but where I felt it was needed was a real kind of long-term strategy to deal with the underlying issues that were impacting the young people I was working with. So me and a friend put together a program with 12 young people. They were all either rough sleeping or staying in emergency accommodation, and it involved 3 sessions a week, goal setting, personal development, key work support. And within that 6 months, all became housed, all became employed, all became much better runners. But I think the biggest change for me was seeing how they walked into a room. Beforehand, the young people, when they first joined us, their heads were down, they couldn't communicate, they didn't talk about their needs particularly well, and issues that could have been dealt with just became explosive situations. And within that 6 months, they could own a room, and that was really wonderful to see. And really, I didn't really think much more of it from there. I continued to do it in my evenings. And then a couple of things kind of went towards us becoming a charity. It was never my goal or ambition to start a charity. I was very much happy in the role I was doing, and I was getting that kind of long-term itch sorted by doing this stuff in the evening. But my partner, she started, we had our first child, and she was going through postnatal depression. And I was coming home relatively insensitively, talking about the incredible benefits of running and how the young people's mental health was changing. And then it kind of then spiraled into something where I didn't really anticipate it going. One of our young people ran the London Marathon, and we got a bit of support, and we were getting requests to expand across London. And then another tipping point was one of the guys you saw in that video, a guy called Steve, who went from 8 stone and using heroin when he first joined us to a 13-stone personal trainer when he left. 2 of those people in those videos now work for us full time. And I think what we a real program that actually worked on the fundamental basics that most people gain when they're children. So the discipline, the ability to communicate, to manage their mental health, to manage their emotional needs, to be able to communicate properly. And it's now relatively mistakenly spread to London, Manchester. We launched in Leeds full time recently. We work with niche numbers still, so each coach is responsible for working with 30 young people a year, and then a broader amount just to provide opportunities to. But it's been a hell of a ride, and we're doing some really impactful work, and it's been good.
Yeah, and why running, Alex? What's the immediate impact that you see? And you give a couple of examples and success stories there, which is brilliant. But why running, and what is the common denominator that you see across everyone that joins the program?
Well, I think running is very different to a lot of sports. Being a running convert, someone that used to have a really horrible relationship with running, where it was, I ran to keep fit for football. It was almost a thing that you do to ensure you can do other things. Whereas what running does and what it has is very unique to different people, because you're not dealing with anything but yourself. You're out there, you're in your own thoughts, you're processing information. And instead of having to deal with the stimuli of everything else around you, like a ball or a player or an opponent, you're very much reflecting. And I think one of the early things that I learned when we were running is I was able to have really kind of deep and meaningful conversations, especially with the young men, because it was less intense. First of all, they saw me struggling, so there was a grounder there. But then on the flip side, you're not staring into someone's eyes. And as a youth worker and as a person that's dealing with homelessness, you have to ask quite personal questions, and sitting across the table is a real formal and quite a challenging situation to ask quite in-depth conversations with. So what it did is it allowed you to run side by side in a real kind of more neutral setting. And we were able to kind of bring about a lot of positive change, a lot of trust that was built, because a lot of our young people struggle with trusting organisations. They've been let down by either family members in their past or organisations that were supposed to help them. So there's a real kind of lack of trust. So I think what running enables is conversations, which is brilliant. And it enables a real time period of reflection when you start doing it on your own. So that's the uniqueness of running. I think for many of our young people, they don't like running to start off with. It's not like the major sports. So, Claude, who was one of the guys in the video there, he's one of our lead coaches. He's very good to start off with, almost chopping the vegetables up small when you're feeding your kids. Okay, so he breaks it down to a real base level, and then we improve people's fitness. And I think what's wonderful about running is you're in complete control of it. A lot of young people that we work with don't have control over their lives. They're dictated to by different organizations and different structures. And a lot of those structures they have to engage with are not really fit for purpose. So you can attend as many housing appointments as you want. You can attend as a lot of job interviews. If you've got a background, if you've got a criminal record, if you've got all these things, the odds are really against you. And you can get to a point where it's like, I've engaged with this system, I don't want to engage with any process anymore. And I think the wonderful thing about running is it helps you relearn process. And if you're committing to a step-by-step, breaking down a massive, overwhelming goal and bringing it into a small micro levels and building up slowly by surely, because that's how we train people to run a marathon. We always speak to young people when they first join our program about finding their impossible. So we get them out on their first run and we try and run them ragged in the first session. So we do 30 minutes of how intense they could possibly go. And normally they'll last, or the boys will always think they're a lot more fitter than they actually are. And they'll last about 15 minutes before just, I give up. And then it's like, okay, so we're going to revisit this. How far do you think we can go? What's your impossible moment? And they'll go, well, I'll never be able to run 10K, or I never run a half, or I never run a marathon. And it's our job essentially to bring them to that point. Because I think once you bring them to that point where they're enabling themselves through their own hard work to break down things that they never thought was possible, it then opens a catalyst of, okay, where can this go? And what other parts of your life feel impossible? And how can we control the controllables to get you to those goals? And that's where the real kind of work happens. And we see it, I think even last year during the pandemic, I think it's 87% of our young people reached employment. We see significant gains around mental health, their resilience. We're very, very fortunate to work with a really inspiring group of young people that just need a little bit of structure and a little bit of safety of how and where they're going.
Yeah, and to kind of finish off with people that are in the room, how can they help? What can they look out for? It's sort of a two-part question, I guess. How can people support what you guys are doing? But also, what are some common myths that you are constantly having to dispel about that type of person, that type of personality that you guys come in contact with quite regularly?
I think from just kind of taking it back to just everyone, first of all, if you don't run, give it a go. And it will be awful when you start. And it will be awful the first few weeks. And then it begins to become a little bit easier and you begin to reap the benefits of it. And, people call it free counselling. And I would agree. There's never a run that you can go on that doesn't help. In terms of from an organisational perspective, we're a small charity. There's 9 of us across the country. We're in the process of launching a wellbeing at work program where kind of we work on staff members' mental health, and we take a lot of the lessons that we've learned from the work we do with young people and translating that into a space where it can gain. And we've done that so far with Mercedes-Benz, who have really enjoyed that process. So there's always that to engage with. Running for us, picking us as kind of your charity of the year, those kind of things are always a winner and go a long way for us. But then around myths, I think there was a stat recently, about 2 years ago, from Centrepoint, one of the leading youth homelessness organisations, that 1 in 7 young people experience rough sleeping at one point in their life. So I think that always hit home for me, because that's you go into your kid's class, that's 3 to 4 children in that class that will sleep rough at one point in their lives, and that's how indicative and widespread that problem is. So I think often people feel homelessness, youth homelessness, is not them or their kids, and it can so easily be that. The statistics show it, and I think it's something that, you know, to bring it closer, and you know, I think you know, they've all gone through really, really difficult times. And, you know, sometimes we have a community and a network or family members that are able us to kind of work through those times. I can't count the amount of times I messed up as a child. Community around me. And we try to look to provide that community. So in terms of dispelling myths, I would say just bring it closer to you and understand that it's not something that happens over there or to someone else. It happens to people in your kids' classes. Statistics prove that out.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Alex. We've got to wrap it up there, I'm afraid, but a really interesting insight into another really positive charity that's taking a group of people from one place to another. And thanks very much for sharing the story. I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with it, having taken up running during lockdown. And I've certainly seen a lot of our members in our own community that are running more, and the positive effects are for all to see. But Alex, for the time being, thanks very much. And
Thank you so much.
He'll be around for people to chat to. Thanks very much, Alex.